The restaurant was alive with the warmth of Christmas lights, the soft hum of carols, and the clinking of cutlery, but all of that seemed to vanish in an instant as the tension in the corner booth reached a fever pitch. Mariah, a kind-hearted, hard-working waitress, froze mid-step as the booming, icy voice of the man at the table cut through the cozy ambience like a knife. "I said, bring me something decent, not whatever this is," the man barked, gesturing violently at the plate in front of him. His perfectly tailored suit shimmered under the restaurant lights, a stark contrast to Mariah's humble uniform and weary expression. A few diners nearby glanced over, their curiosity piqued, while others pretended not to see, unwilling to interfere in what was clearly someone else's drama. Mariah swallowed hard, gripping the tray as if it were a lifeline. "Sir, she began, her voice steady despite the growing lump in her throat. "I brought exactly what you ordered." "If it's not to your liking, I can." "Not to my liking." The man leaned forward, his tone dripping with scorn. "This is the worst service I've ever seen, and you don't just stand there, fix it. I don't care how, just make it right." His hand slammed against the table, rattling the silverware and making the napkins leap. Mariah's hands trembled, but she forced herself to nod, taking a deep breath. "I'll get the chef to prepare a fresh plate immediately, sir." A laugh erupted from his companion, a younger woman with a smug, self-satisfied smile, her eyes glittering with amusement at Mariah's obvious discomfort. "Oh, look at her. Can you believe this girl? She can barely carry a tray without shaking. Maybe she should just stay in the kitchen and not bother anyone." The words cut through Mariah like shards of ice. She felt every eye in the restaurant on her, the warmth of the holiday spirit replaced with humiliation and embarrassment. Every ounce of dignity she had built over years of hard work threatened to crumble under the weight of their ridicule. I'm just trying to help," Mariah whispered, more to herself than to them, her voice barely audible. The man scoffed. "Help? This is your idea of helping? You're a disgrace. Honestly, I don't understand how someone like you even gets hired. Do you even know what a Christmas dinner is supposed to look like?" Mariah's chest tightened. She wanted to explain to defend herself, but she knew there was no winning against this level of arrogance and cruelty. Instead, she focused on the people sitting quietly at the far end of the restaurant, a frail elderly couple, their eyes fixed on her with quiet, patient hope. They hadn't yet ordered, but she could see the hunger in their eyes, the way they held each other's hands as if silently agreeing to wait. Her heart ached. She couldn't ignore them, not tonight. Not when she had the chance to offer a little comfort, a little dignity, to someone who had so little. Taking a shaky breath, Mariah set the offending plate down on the table with as much grace as she could muster. "Excuse me, sir," she said, keeping her voice calm despite the panic rising inside her. "I need to take a moment to help someone else. I'll be right back to make sure your order is perfect." The man's eyes narrowed, disbelief twisting his features. "Excuse me, who do you think you are?" I just need a moment," Mariah stammered. "There's an elderly couple in the corner who haven't eaten yet. They look hungry, and I want to make sure they get something warm tonight." The woman laughed, a high-pitched, cruel sound that made Mariah's stomach churn. "Are you serious? You're going to serve them before us? Oh, honey, this is Christmas Eve, not a charity event." "I don't care about the charity," Mariah said quietly, her voice gaining strength despite her fear. "I care about people. That's what matters tonight." The man's face turned crimson with fury. "You dare? You little—" He leapt to his feet, sending his chair crashing backward. "I am paying customer, you will not." But before he could finish, Mariah gently stepped past him, her eyes soft but unwavering. She carried the small tray with 2 plates of warm food directly to the elderly couple. Their hands shook slightly as they reached for the plates, their faces lighting up with gratitude that radiated in the dim, golden glow of the restaurant lights. "Oh, thank you, dear," the woman said, her voice cracking with emotion. "You didn't have to do this for us." Mariah smiled, trying to hide the tears threatening to spill. "Everyone deserves a good meal, especially on Christmas." The man's fury boiled over, but before he could intervene, the entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. A strange, almost imperceptible tension filled the air, as if the room itself sensed something monumental was about to be revealed. The elderly couple exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. Then, ever so subtly, their hands brushed against each other, revealing a glimmer of wealth, a hint of expensive rings, watches, and subtle elegance that Mariah didn't yet notice. The man, oblivious, continued his tirade, his voice growing louder and more unhinged. "I don't care who they are. You'll regret this, do you hear me?" Mariah's heart pounded. She wanted to run to escape, but she stood her ground, holding the tray like a shield between her kindness and his cruelty. Something in the couple's quiet composure, their gentle smiles, reassured her. She didn't know who they truly were, but she knew one thing: she had done the right thing. The woman reached out, touching Mariah's hand lightly. "You have a good heart. Don't let anyone take that away from you." It was then that Mariah felt it. A shift in the room, a subtle ripple in the air. Something about the couple felt different, important, powerful, yet the man, red-faced and shouting, was completely blind to it, consumed entirely by his own rage. And that's when it happened. The man pointed at Mariah, his voice a venomous hiss. "You think you can lecture me? You think you can teach me about Christmas? You're nothing, just a lowly waitress." The words froze in the air. Mariah's eyes locked with the couple's. In that split second, something unspoken passed between them, something monumental, something that the arrogant man could not yet comprehend. Unbeknownst to him, the people Mariah had quietly fed, the ones he deemed insignificant, were billionaires, people whose wealth and influence could change her life forever. And at that moment, the man had no idea that his cruelty would soon meet its match in a way he could never imagine. The scene hung in suspense, the restaurant tense, the music faint, the carols drowned out by the storm brewing at the corner booth. Every patron felt it, a revelation approaching, the kind that changes everything. And Mariah, trembling but steadfast, was standing at the eye of this storm, completely unaware that tonight's small act of kindness would ignite a chain of events beyond her wildest dreams. Question of the day: have you ever been judged unfairly or humiliated in public for simply doing the right thing? Share your experience in the comments below and tell us where you're watching from. But before we see how this ends, let's go back to where this story truly began. The early morning sun filtered through the thin curtains of a small apartment, casting pale beams onto the worn wooden floors. The hum of the radiator was the only sound besides the faint ticking of the old clock on the wall. Mariah stirred from her sleep, blinking against the weak light, and reached out to the side to touch the empty space where her son, little Caleb, had been sleeping. He had already gone. School bus pickup was early, and even at 6, he was disciplined in ways that made Mariah proud but quietly anxious. She rose slowly, stretching her tired muscles. Her body ached, the result of long shifts at the diner, back-to-back nights of waiting tables, and the constant worry that rent would be late or the electricity would flicker off before the month ended. But she never complained. Not aloud, at least. She learned that her struggles were hers to bear, and worrying out loud rarely helped anyone. Mariah's apartment was modest. A small kitchen, a single bedroom shared with Caleb, and a living area with a threadbare couch. Every corner bore the marks of careful thrift: second-hand furniture, patched rugs, mismatched dishes, and a wall adorned with hand-drawn pictures from Caleb. There were no luxury items, no flashy decorations, but it was a home filled with love, resilience, and the unshakable warmth of hope. She moved quickly, already rehearsing the day in her head. The diner where she worked was a local spot that never closed, run by a gruff but fair owner who had become like family over the years. Today was Christmas Eve, and the diner would be packed. Regulars, last-minute shoppers, tourists passing through, all would need her attention, her patience, and her smile, which she carried even when exhaustion threatened to pull it away. Before heading out, Mariah knelt down by Caleb's side, brushing a loose curl from his forehead. "Have a good day, baby," she whispered, planting a quick kiss. "Don't forget to listen to your teacher. And remember, you're stronger than you think, okay?" He gave her a sleepy half-smile and murmured, "I know, Mommy, you're the strongest." Mariah's heart squeezed painfully. She wanted so badly to provide more for him: a better apartment, new clothes, toys, maybe even a small Christmas present that wasn't store-bought or second-hand. But reality was a constant, pressing weight. Still, she never let him see her despair. Instead, she packed his lunch, double-checked his backpack, and sent him off with a wave, carrying a small piece of encouragement for both of them. Once he was gone, Mariah finally allowed herself a moment to exhale. She dressed in her waitress uniform, a simple black dress with a white apron that had seen better days, and pulled her hair into a practical bun. She had learned long ago that appearances mattered in the service industry, not because anyone cared about her, but because professionalism often determined whether a customer treated her with even the smallest shred of respect. The walk to the diner was short, but the cold December air bit sharply at her cheeks. She pulled her scarf tighter, savoring the crispness that reminded her of winter holidays she had almost forgotten. Mariah had grown up in a household where kindness was currency, even when money was scarce. Her parents had taught her to see value in people, not possessions, and to always lend a helping hand if she could. That principle guided every step of her life, every choice she made, and it was especially evident in how she treated others at work, always with patience, always with care, even when customers were rude or entitled. Inside the diner, the smell of freshly brewed coffee, sizzling bacon, and warm bread greeted her like an old friend. The bustle of activity was immediate, orders being shouted, silverware clinking, trays being stacked and carried with precise urgency. Mariah slid behind the counter, her hands moving almost instinctively, taking orders, checking tickets, and ensuring that every table felt seen, even when the din of the busy room threatened to drown out her soft voice. Yet, despite her efficiency, there was always a worry gnawing at her. Tonight was special, not just because of the Christmas Eve rush, but because of a small opportunity that could change her life. A wealthy patron had promised to speak with her about a catering job, something that could mean extra income for her family, a small cushion to make this holiday season easier. She knew the stakes were high. This opportunity could be her chance to catch up on bills, buy a few presents for Caleb, and even treat him to a small slice of normal childhood joy. But with the potential came fear. Mariah knew that wealth often brought arrogance. People like the man in the restaurant, the type she feared she might encounter, looked down on her, assuming her place in the world before she had a chance to prove herself. She had faced prejudice before, subtle and overt, and it had always stung. But she had also learned that resilience came not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them with dignity. Her mind wandered briefly as she prepared for the day. She thought of the elderly couple who often walked past her apartment on cold nights, carrying shopping bags heavier than their frail arms should manage. She imagined them sitting alone, perhaps without family nearby, and it made her heart ache. She had made it a personal mission to help those in need when she could, even if it was just a warm meal or a kind word. Her generosity was quiet, almost invisible because she never expected anything in return. That was who she was. As the diner filled with the morning rush, Mariah moved from table to table, greeting regulars by name, offering gentle smiles, and ensuring each order was perfect. She noticed small details others overlooked: a child struggling with a tray, a man too embarrassed to ask for extra cream, a couple celebrating their anniversary quietly in the corner. She intervened when needed, offering assistance and always doing so with humility. By late afternoon, the diner had begun to calm, but Mariah's mind was already racing ahead to the evening. She had a plan. After her shift, she would head to a nearby restaurant she had never worked at before, one known for its lavish clientele. Tonight, there would be an unusual opportunity, an elderly couple rumored to be dining there who were, unbeknownst to her, billionaires. They often visited anonymously, testing kindness in people without revealing their wealth. Mariah had no idea she would cross paths with them tonight, but something deep inside her told her that this would be a night that mattered. Her friends at work teased her lightly, unaware of her anxiety. "You're acting like it's a big deal," said Tom, a fellow waiter, wiping down the counter. "It's just another Christmas Eve, don't sweat it." Mariah smiled politely but didn't respond. It was just another Christmas Eve. This night carried the weight of hope, of opportunity, and the chance to do something meaningful. The thought of Caleb, alone at home, waiting for her to return, gave her courage. She wanted to make the day count, to ensure that even a stranger could feel the warmth she hoped to give her own child every day. As the evening approached, Mariah pulled on her coat, checked her reflection in the mirror, and whispered a small prayer. Not for wealth, not for recognition, but for strength to do the right thing, for kindness to win where cruelty often lurked, and for the courage to act, even when fear threatened to stop her. Little did she know the choices she was about to make, the simple, selfless decisions to feed those in need and to stand up for what was right, would set in motion a chain of events that would confront arrogance, reveal hidden truths, and ultimately change her life forever. Tonight, a small act of kindness would ripple outward in ways she could never imagine, putting her directly in the path of the very people who had the power to alter her destiny. And so, with her heart full of quiet determination and her mind focused on what mattered, Mariah stepped out into the winter evening, unaware of the storm she was about to face, or the profound reward waiting on the other side of courage. The air outside the restaurant was crisp, the night sky glittering with a million tiny stars that reflected off the snow-dusted streets. Mariah clutched her coat tightly around her, her hands trembling not from the cold, but from the anxiety bubbling inside her chest. She had never worked in a place like this before. The Golden Magnolia, a five-star restaurant known for catering to elite clientele, glittered with extravagance, its doors polished to perfection and golden lights spilling onto the sidewalk like liquid warmth. Every step toward the entrance felt heavier than the last. She could hear the faint hum of classical music through the glass doors and glimpses of lavish decor. Crystal chandeliers, velvet chairs, marble floors made her feel painfully aware of the stark contrast between her modest world and the luxurious one she was about to enter. The Golden Magnolia was a place where elegance ruled, and humility was often mistaken for incompetence. Mariah paused at the threshold, taking a deep breath and mentally repeating the mantra that had carried her through every challenge. Kindness matters more than appearances. Courage matters more than fear. With that, she stepped inside. The moment she entered, the atmosphere shifted. Diners in designer coats and diamond jewelry glanced briefly at her, some with polite curiosity, most with indifference, and a few with thinly veiled judgment. She felt their eyes like tiny weights pressing on her shoulders, but she held her head high, walking toward the hostess stand with measured steps. "Good evening," Mariah said softly but clearly, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her stomach. The hostess, a sharply dressed woman with a sharp bob and sharper eyes, looked her over from head to toe. "You're—" she started, suspicion lacing her tone. "I'm Mariah," she said, smiling politely. "I'm here to deliver tonight's special orders and assist with the dinner service." The hostess raised an eyebrow, her judgmental expression speaking volumes. "Right," she said flatly, handing Mariah a small clipboard. "Table 14, they're expecting you, and don't mess this up, I don't tolerate mistakes." Mariah nodded, clutching the clipboard like a lifeline. Mistakes had always haunted her, but she knew that tonight she had to be flawless, not just for herself, but for the people who might rely on her kindness. She moved across the gleaming marble floor, each step measured, aware of the soft hush of the restaurant and the subtle shift of attention as she passed by. The tables were adorned with crisp white linens, sparkling silverware, and elaborate centerpieces that seemed almost intimidating in their perfection. She approached table 14, where a middle-aged man in a sharp suit and a younger woman with an air of superiority were seated. Their posture, their expressions, their very presence radiated entitlement. "Table 14, Mariah announced politely, placing the tray gently before them. The man's eyes narrowed immediately, scanning the plate as if it held a personal insult. "Is this what I ordered?" he barked. "Because if it is, someone needs to explain how this constitutes acceptable service." Mariah's heart sank. She knew from the start that he was difficult, that his entitlement would push her patience to the edge. But she held her voice steady. "Yes, sir, I prepared exactly what was requested. If there's anything you'd like adjusted, I'll be happy to bring the chef personally to discuss it." The man laughed, a cold, dismissive sound that sent shivers down her spine. "Bring the chef? Oh, sweetheart, I don't think you understand. This isn't about food. This is about competence. And right now, you're failing spectacularly." The woman leaned forward, her voice dripping with mockery. "Honestly, look at her. Can you believe they let someone like this serve here? Maybe they need to check the hiring standards, or maybe they don't, since incompetence clearly doesn't matter here." Mariah's hands tightened around the tray, her knuckles whitening. She felt every patron's eyes on her, the weight of their judgment suffocating. She wanted to shrink into herself, disappear, but she reminded herself why she was here, to help, to be kind, to act with courage despite fear. I can adjust the meal immediately," she said, her voice trembling slightly but her gaze never faltering. The man slammed his hand on the table, rattling the silverware. "Adjust it. No, 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 you've already wasted my time. Do you have any idea what my time is worth? Do you even comprehend the concept of service?" Mariah's chest tightened. She could feel panic rising, threatening to overwhelm her. She had faced rude customers before, sure, but this was different. This was not a simple complaint. It was a calculated public humiliation, and it seemed like everyone in the room had turned into silent spectators of her disgrace. Her eyes flicked to the elderly couple in the corner, the ones she had noticed earlier, sitting quietly with a small stack of napkins and their hands folded over one another. They were watching her, their expressions gentle but filled with an almost imperceptible knowing. It was subtle, but it gave her a flicker of courage. She reminded herself of their quiet patience, the warmth in their eyes, and the importance of staying composed. "I understand your frustration, sir," she said softly, carefully choosing her words. I will personally ensure your meal meets your expectations. Please allow me a moment to make it right. The man leaned back in his chair, a sneer forming. A moment. You think a moment will fix your incompetence? You're not just a failure, you're a disgrace. A disgrace. Do you know what it means to disappoint someone like me on Christmas Eve? The humiliation hit Mariah in waves, and for a moment her vision blurred. She felt the flush creeping up her neck, the heat of embarrassment burning her ears. The restaurant's classical music faded into the background as the man's voice grew louder, echoing with arrogance, dominance, and cruelty. Yet through it all, she saw the elderly couple quietly waiting, their hunger apparent but patience unbroken. Her heart clenched. She knew what she had to do. She couldn't let cruelty dictate the night, and she couldn't abandon kindness, not now, not ever. Summoning every ounce of courage, Mariah spoke. Sir, I understand you are upset, but I cannot ignore those who are hungry and waiting. Please allow me to attend to them for just a moment. I promise I will return immediately to ensure your meal is perfect. The man's face twisted in disbelief and rage. You dare prioritize someone else over me. Who do you think you are? Mariah's voice was calm, unwavering. I am a person who believes everyone deserves kindness, sir, regardless of their age, status, or wealth. The woman at the table laughed cruelly. Oh, this is rich. She actually thinks she can lecture me about kindness. Look at her. Pathetic. Mariah's chest tightened, but she kept moving forward, stepping past their seething presence with the tray in hand, walking steadily toward the corner where the elderly couple waited. Their eyes softened as she approached, and she couldn't help but notice the faint glint of elegance, a watch here, a ring there, that seemed oddly out of place for a couple living so humbly. Good evening, Mariah said, placing the warm plates before them. I hope this brings a little comfort tonight. Everyone deserves a good meal on Christmas Eve. The couple's eyes filled with gratitude, their hands trembling as they reached for the food. Thank you, dear, the woman whispered, her voice cracking slightly. You didn't have to do this for us. Mariah smiled, fighting back tears. It's my pleasure, Merry Christmas. She turned back to face the wrath of the man and woman, who were now both fuming with outrage. Every patron felt the tension, the room thick with the unsaid consequences of what was about to happen. In that instant, Mariah realized something profound. Kindness had put her in direct opposition to cruelty, but it had also created a moment of truth. The elderly couple's subtle elegance hinted at hidden power, the kind of influence that could shift the balance entirely. And though she had no idea, the arrogant man was walking unknowingly toward a reckoning he would never see coming. The confrontation had begun, and the stage was set for a Christmas Eve moment that would change everything, not just for Mariah, but for everyone in the restaurant. The tension in the Golden Magnolia had reached a fever pitch. Mariah stood between the luxurious table of the infuriated man and woman and the elderly couple she had just served, her chest rising and falling with quiet determination. Every muscle in her body felt taut with anticipation, every heartbeat echoing like a drum in the near-silent room. Patrons watched with bated breath, sensing that something monumental was about to unfold. The man slammed his fist on the table again, his face flushed with anger. You think you can treat people like this, ignore me, and still walk away unharmed? His voice reverberated, sharp and cutting, yet there was a flicker of uncertainty as he noticed the unwavering calm in Mariah's eyes. Mariah swallowed, her hand steady despite the nervous energy coursing through her. She had stood up for what was right, fed those in need, and refused to bow under the weight of cruelty. And now the universe, or perhaps fate itself, was poised to intervene. The elderly woman, her hand still resting lightly on the tray of food, finally spoke, her voice gentle yet commanding enough to silence the surrounding whispers. Excuse me, she said. Every head in the restaurant turned toward her. I believe there's something that needs to be clarified before this evening goes any further. The man snorted dismissively. Clarified? Don't patronize me, lady. This isn't about you. You sit there eating your meal, and I suggest you. The woman raised a single hand, cutting him off with effortless authority. You may not realize it, but you are mistaken. This young woman, she said, her eyes locking onto Mariah with a warmth that radiated trust and respect, did exactly what no one else here has. She showed kindness without expecting anything in return, and she did it for people who truly matter. The man's brow furrowed. People who matter, are you serious? They're just... The elderly man gently touched his wife's arm. Do you want me to show him? The woman nodded. Yes, it's time. With a soft smile, the couple reached into their coats and produced small, leather-bound business cards, handing them to Mariah. But as the man at the table leaned forward, squinting to see, his world began to unravel. The couple were not ordinary diners. They were billionaires, the kind of people whose names had appeared in magazines, whose philanthropy shaped entire cities, whose decisions could alter industries overnight. And Mariah, unaware of their wealth until this very moment, had served them not as faceless clients, but as human beings deserving care and compassion. The woman's voice rang clear and calm. "These cards are proof of our identity. We have chosen tonight to remain anonymous to observe, and we have watched you, young lady, and seen something rare, genuine kindness, courage, and integrity." Mariah's eyes widened. She took a shaky breath, barely believing what she was hearing. Her hands, which had been clenched in anticipation and fear, began to relax. I don't understand," she whispered. You're—" The elderly man chuckled softly, a sound filled with warmth and pride. "Yes, we are who we are, and tonight you treated us as equals. You didn't care about wealth, titles, or appearances. You cared about people, and that, Mariah, is priceless." The man in the suit, who had been shouting, leaning, and dominating every interaction moments before, froze. His face drained of color as the realization hit him. The couple he had dismissed, the ones he had sneered at, the ones he had completely underestimated, they were people of extraordinary influence. His arrogance, his cruelty, and his complete lack of empathy now stood exposed in the sharp light of truth. The room itself seemed to shift, the air thick with stunned silence. Patrons whispered quietly among themselves, some looking between the antagonist and Mariah with incredulity. Even the staff, previously cautious, now looked on with awe and newfound respect. The woman continued, her voice unwavering. "And you, young man," she said, directing her gaze at the antagonist, "your behavior tonight has shown exactly why kindness should always precede entitlement. People like you often mistake wealth for superiority, but true greatness is measured by character, not by bank accounts or titles." The man's mouth opened, then closed. He tried to speak, but no words came. His face was a mixture of shame, disbelief, and a creeping fear. Every insult he had hurled, every sneer he had given, now lay bare for everyone to see. He had no idea how close he had come to being on the wrong side of someone who could have utterly ruined him. Mariah, still trembling slightly, met the couple's gaze. Their encouragement was like a lifeline, pulling her from the edge of fear into the center of possibility. For the first time that evening, she felt relief wash over her, mingled with disbelief and quiet triumph. You mean all this?" she whispered. "Because I just wanted to help. I didn't know who they were. I wanted them to have something to eat." The woman's eyes softened. "And that, Mariah, is exactly why tonight matters. Your intentions, your heart, and your courage have proven that true kindness can create miracles in unexpected ways. You have acted with integrity when no one else demanded it, and now the universe has taken notice." The antagonist finally found his voice, but it was small, weak, and trembling. I had no idea. I didn't know." The elderly man leaned forward slightly. "You may not have known, but your actions have consequences. Tonight, your arrogance has been made visible to everyone. And it is a lesson, hopefully, one you will never forget. Humility and respect are worth far more than any money in your wallet." The man's shoulders sagged, his rage deflating into a mixture of shame and fear. He realized too late that his attempt to dominate and humiliate had been not only futile but profoundly foolish. Mariah, still clutching the tray, felt tears prick at her eyes, not from embarrassment, but from the overwhelming relief and joy of being recognized for simply doing the right thing. She glanced around the restaurant. Every table seemed to hum with silent acknowledgement, an unspoken recognition that she had stood up for compassion in a world that often overlooked it. The elderly woman extended a hand toward her. "Mariah, you have a choice tonight. You can continue to live modestly and work hard as you always have, but we would like to offer you an opportunity, a chance to make a difference, a chance to be supported, and a chance to thrive." Mariah shook her head, disbelief and awe fighting within her. I don't know what to say." The man smiled gently. "No words are necessary. Just continue being the person you already are. That's more valuable than any wealth, more powerful than any position, and more meaningful than any recognition." At that moment, the antagonist slumped into his chair, pale and shaken, a shell of the arrogant figure who had dominated the room just minutes before. His mouth opened and closed again, searching for words, but the silence of the room and the quiet authority of the couple rendered him powerless. And in that silence, Mariah realized something profound. Sometimes the world doesn't immediately notice kindness, but it always remembers. Sometimes the right choice comes with risk, humiliation, and fear. but it also comes with unexpected reward. And tonight, on this Christmas Eve, her courage and heart had been witnessed by those who could truly appreciate them. The restaurant erupted not in chaos, but in quiet awe. Patrons whispered, servers exchanged astonished glances, and Mariah stood tall, trembling, smiling, and filled with a newfound sense of purpose. She had faced cruelty, intimidation, and public humiliation, and yet her kindness had not only endured but shone brighter than any chandelier in the room. The elderly couple, the billionaires in disguise, leaned back in their chairs, satisfied. Their quiet test of character had succeeded. Mariah had passed with flying colors, and the man who had sought to humiliate her now faced the stark reality that arrogance could never triumph over integrity, empathy, or courage. Mariah exhaled deeply, a tear slipping down her cheek, and whispered to herself, "Merry Christmas indeed." For the first time that night, she felt a warmth that went far beyond the golden lights of the golden magnolia. It was a warmth that came from knowing she had done the right thing, from seeing the world respond in kind, and from realizing that sometimes miracles arrived in the form of quiet, humble acts of compassion. The restaurant had shifted entirely in atmosphere. The clinking of silverware and the low hum of conversation returned, but now it carried a sense of reverence, of quiet awe. Every patron seemed to hold their breath as the story of Mariah's courage unfolded in their minds, while the arrogant man at table 14 sat frozen, a mixture of shame, disbelief, and fear etched across his face. The billionaire couple had risen from their seats, their presence commanding yet gentle, and all eyes turned toward them. Mariah, standing near the corner, felt her heart race, not with fear this time, but with relief, gratitude, and a profound sense of vindication. The woman's voice, calm but carrying undeniable authority, rang through the room. "It's important that everyone here witnesses the consequences of arrogance and cruelty. This gentleman's actions tonight, his disrespect, his entitlement, and his attempts to humiliate someone acting from kindness will not go unchecked." The man's face paled further, his arrogance evaporating into stark vulnerability. I don't," he began, but the billionaire woman held up her hand. "No words can undo the harm caused," she said, "but accountability can be immediate." She reached into her purse and made a quick call on her phone. Within minutes, a manager from the Golden Magnolia approached, and whispers spread. The man and his companion were being asked to leave immediately. "Your behavior is unacceptable," the manager stated plainly. "You are being removed from the premises. If you attempt to return, we will involve law enforcement." The man's face contorted with rage, but no one paid him heed. His companion, equally humiliated, tried to protest, but the manager's voice cut through, firm and resolute. "This is for the safety and dignity of our staff and guests. You are being banned from the restaurant indefinitely." Mariah watched quietly, her hands clasped in front of her. Relief and a quiet sense of triumph filled her chest. It wasn't vindictiveness that brought her satisfaction, it was justice. The world had righted itself, at least in this small corner, and cruelty had met its match. The billionaire couple now turned their attention fully to Mariah. The woman knelt slightly, placing a hand over Mariah's. "You have no idea how rare it is to meet someone with your integrity," she said softly. "You have been tested tonight, and you have passed with flying colors. Your kindness, courage, and dedication have not gone unnoticed." Tears pricked Mariah's eyes, and she blinked rapidly, swallowing hard. I didn't do anything special," she whispered. I tried to help people, that's all." The man smiled warmly, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "That's precisely what makes it extraordinary. Most people would have cowered, argued, or looked away. You acted with heart, and in doing so, you've proven that character is more powerful than wealth, status, or fear." Mariah's voice trembled as she spoke again. I don't know what to say. I've never had anyone recognize that before. Not like this." The woman shook her head gently. "Consider this recognition long overdue. And consider this opportunity. We would like to help you, Mariah, not as a charity case, but as a person of integrity and potential. There are projects, positions, and experiences we can offer that will not only help you provide for your son, but allow your kindness to ripple outward, touching countless others." Mariah's hands shook as she held the small cards the couple handed her. They contained names, numbers, and discreet instructions for reaching out to them directly. She realized in that moment that her life could change entirely, not because of luck, but because she had stayed true to herself. The elderly man leaned closer. "We want to ensure that kindness is rewarded, not ignored. Tonight, you've reminded us all why compassion matters more than appearances, and why integrity can never be bought or faked." Mariah felt a wave of gratitude so overwhelming that she barely noticed the murmurs of awe spreading throughout the restaurant. Patrons whispered among themselves, servers glanced at her with newfound respect, and even the manager nodded subtly, acknowledging the quiet heroism that had just unfolded. Finally, the couple smiled at Mariah one last time before heading toward the exit. "Merry Christmas," the woman said, "and thank you for reminding us all of the power of a good heart." As the doors closed behind them, Mariah let herself exhale fully for the first time in hours. Relief, joy, and pride flooded through her. She turned toward the staff who had been watching, their expressions a mix of admiration and respect. One of the younger servers approached, hesitating slightly. "Mariah, that was incredible. I've never seen anyone stand up like that before." Mariah shook her head with a small smile. "I didn't do it to be incredible," she said quietly. "I did it because it was right." Because kindness isn't about recognition, it's about doing what you can to make a difference, no matter how small. The manager came over, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've shown everyone here what true courage looks like," he said, "and you've done it with grace. Tonight you've reminded all of us, staff and patrons alike, what matters most." Mariah's eyes brimmed with tears. She had faced humiliation, intimidation, and outright cruelty, yet she had remained steadfast. And now justice had been served not as vengeance, but as recognition of integrity and moral courage. Later, in a quieter moment, Mariah sat at a small table, sipping tea, her heart still racing. A staff member brought her a plate of warm bread, smiling softly. "It's on the house," they said. "For you, you earned it." Mariah shook her head, laughing softly through her tears. "I didn't do it for that," she whispered. "I just did what I thought was right." Her mind drifted briefly to Caleb, imagining his small face and the smile he would give if he could see her now. She felt a profound sense of relief, knowing that not only had she acted with integrity, but she had also paved a path toward a future where she could provide more for him, where small acts of kindness could create real change in the world around her. By the time she left the Golden Magnolia that night, the snow had begun to fall lightly, dusting the city in white. Mariah walked home with her head held high, a smile tugging at her lips and the warmth of the evening lingering in her chest. She had been tested, she had stood her ground, and she had emerged not only victorious but affirmed in her belief that compassion and courage mattered more than wealth, arrogance, or appearances. And though she didn't yet fully understand the magnitude of what lay ahead, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The choices she made today, small, quiet, selfless choices, had changed her life forever. Later, as she tucked Caleb into bed that night, she whispered softly, brushing his hair from his forehead. "Today was special, baby. Sometimes the right thing is the hardest thing to do, but it always makes a difference." Caleb smiled sleepily, mumbling, "I know, Mommy. I always knew you were special." Mariah hugged him tightly, tears falling freely now. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of completion, a feeling that her courage, her kindness, and her unwavering heart had not only been recognized, but rewarded. The injustices of the day had been righted. The arrogant man had faced his consequences, and Mariah had emerged stronger, more confident, and more certain than ever that the path of integrity was the one worth walking. The Christmas Eve night had been long, full of trials, confrontation, and unexpected revelation. But in the end, justice and redemption had prevailed, and Mariah had proven that even in a world filled with arrogance and cruelty, kindness and courage would always shine the brightest. 1 year had passed since that unforgettable Christmas Eve, the night Mariah had faced arrogance, stood up for kindness, and unknowingly changed her life forever. The memory of that evening remained vivid in her mind, but the shadows of fear and humiliation that had once clung to her like heavy chains were long gone. Mariah stepped into a brightly lit office space that smelled faintly of fresh coffee and polished wood. The room was modest but welcoming, a far cry from the small apartment she had shared with Caleb only a year ago. Her desk was tidy, her computer humming quietly, and the sunlight streaming through large windows illuminated the framed photographs of her son and family. This was no longer just a job. It was a career built on her integrity, her courage, and the recognition she had earned from those billionaires who had silently observed her all those months ago. A gentle knock at the door made her look up, and her assistant, a cheerful young woman named Lisa, stepped in with a warm smile. "Mariah, the catering meeting for the holiday charity gala starts in 15 minutes, she said, holding a stack of schedules. "They're excited to have you lead it this year." Mariah smiled, the pride swelling in her chest. Just 1 year ago, she had been a waitress, exhausted and underappreciated, uncertain of how she would provide for her son during the holidays. Now she was organizing large-scale events, creating opportunities for families in need, and mentoring other young women who reminded her of herself, hardworking, kind, and often underestimated. "Thank you, Lisa," Mariah said, adjusting her blazer. "Let's make sure this gala is unforgettable, for everyone." Her gaze drifted to the framed cards on her desk, the ones the billionaire couple had handed her on that Christmas Eve. They weren't just reminders of her past, they were symbols of possibility. They had trusted her with opportunities that she never could have imagined, and she had used them not for selfish gain, but to amplify kindness and help those who had little. Every decision, every act of generosity reflected the lessons she had learned about courage, compassion, and integrity. Meanwhile, across the city, the antagonist from that fateful night was facing a very different reality. The man who had once sneered at Mariah and attempted to humiliate her had lost clients, business contracts, and social credibility. His arrogance had made him a cautionary tale in elite circles, a reminder that cruelty and entitlement could unravel even the most carefully constructed image of power. Despite desperate attempts to rebuild his reputation, the memory of his Christmas Eve outburst had lingered like a shadow, leaving him isolated and humbled. Where once he had demanded respect, now he had to learn it the hard way, through accountability, consequence, and the stark realization that character could never be bought. Back in her office, Mariah checked her phone. A message from the billionaire couple appeared. "Mariah, we wanted to thank you again for everything you've done this past year. Your courage and kindness continue to inspire. Remember, you are exactly the type of person the world needs more of. Merry Christmas." Tears filled Mariah's eyes, but this time they were tears of joy, pride, and fulfillment. The woman she had been a year ago, the young, humble waitress, trembling under public humiliation, would scarcely recognize the life she now led. Yet in all this change, one thing remained constant: her heart, her values, and her unwavering dedication to doing what was right. Later that evening, Mariah arrived home to find Caleb waiting at the door, his eyes bright with excitement. "Mommy, guess what?" he shouted, tugging her hand. "We get to help at the holiday gala. We're going to give food to kids who don't have anything." Mariah hugged him tightly, laughing through her tears. "Yes, baby, we're going to make a difference together." As they entered their home, warm and filled with holiday lights, Mariah reflected on the journey that had brought them here. 1 year ago, she had walked into a restaurant, unsure of herself, facing humiliation, and yet she had chosen kindness over fear. That single act had unlocked a path she could never have imagined: opportunities, respect, and a life that allowed her to share her generosity with others. Even more importantly, she had taught Caleb something invaluable. That character matters more than wealth, that courage and empathy are the true measures of greatness, and that even small acts of kindness can ripple outward in unimaginable ways. The memory of the antagonist's face that night, the pale, stunned realization that he had misjudged everyone around him, remained a silent testament to the power of integrity. Mariah never gossiped or gloated about his downfall. She simply continued to live with the quiet strength that had defined her long before any recognition arrived. Justice had been served, not for vengeance, but as a natural consequence of cruelty and arrogance meeting courage and compassion. The next morning, Mariah attended the gala, her heart brimming with pride. She watched families receive warm meals, gifts, and kindness, knowing that her actions were creating a chain reaction that would extend far beyond the walls of the event. Children laughed as they opened small presents, parents wept quietly with gratitude, and volunteers praised Mariah's leadership and compassion. It was a scene she could scarcely have imagined a year ago, yet it was now her reality, a life built on courage, integrity, and empathy. Later, as she stepped outside into the crisp night air, the snow swirling gently around her, Mariah paused to look up at the stars. 1 year ago, she had stood trembling in a restaurant, facing cruelty that could have broken her spirit. Tonight, she stood strong, empowered, and fulfilled, knowing that the choices she had made, small, humble, selfless choices, had forged a future filled with hope, opportunity, and purpose. The antagonist, in contrast, remained a cautionary tale. His arrogance, cruelty, and lack of empathy had cost him dearly. While he tried to rebuild, he remained aware of the lesson he had learned too late: that character always matters more than status, and that humility and respect are the true currencies of life. Mariah returned home to Caleb, who was asleep, his face peaceful and untroubled. She kissed his forehead, whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude, and felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Life had changed, not because fortune had chosen her, but because she had chosen courage, kindness, and integrity. And in that moment, she understood the moral of her journey, the lesson for herself, her son, and the world. True greatness is measured not by wealth, status, or recognition, but by character, compassion, and courage. The choices we make, no matter how small, can ripple outward and change the world in ways we never imagined. Mariah smiled softly, wrapping a warm blanket around herself and Caleb. "Merry Christmas," she whispered, her heart full, her spirit unbroken, and her life a testament to the power of kindness. As the camera pans out, the streets are alive with twinkling lights and the quiet hum of holiday cheer. Mariah and Caleb walk hand in hand, the snow crunching under their feet, embodying hope, resilience, and the truth that integrity and compassion always leave a mark far greater than wealth or power ever could. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like the video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming, life-changing stories. And remember, small acts of kindness can change lives, maybe even yours.